There's a war going on outside. No one is safe from. Okay, okay. Right? As you can see right here, this is what we'll be dealing with today. By the way, I'm Juice Winner. This is Grand Strange Politics as usual. Let me put that up there for you. And this is just another breaking news report. Okay. All right, so we about to get into this. Now, this story is about an Oklahoma tribe that is split over status of descendants of their former slaves. Basically saying that, yeah, we might have had them as slaves, but because they were slaves, they was not recognized as our people. Now, anybody who know me also know, I go after like ADOS, right? ADOS, right? American descendant, because they are quick to, you know, play the mind game, right? So they'll push every black person out except like this group here. Like, if you wasn't in, this group, as if all of these other people in the West Indies and whatnot did not um contribute by the way of the slave trade and the people that came here. Like, they'll exit all of them out. They'll exit all of the history of anybody who's in this nation, all of the Black Lives Matter, all of that doesn't matter to them, right? And then you have, another group who we're all, aboriginals, we all, were here, this, that, and the third. Those people. So, I have a problem with them as well because they make this we statement, say you, and it wouldn't be a problem. Like, I'm, a part of this group and whatever, and you have a possibility of being that too. And I would not have a problem, right? Because, as I tell anybody, on my father's side, majority of everybody is, Caribbean from the different islands, whether it be Haiti, whether it be Jamaica, whether it be Cuba. My grandmother was Cuban, her sisters, were Haitian, her brothers, Jamaican. And, a lot of people would even think that my grandmother was Jamaican due to the fact of, she was basically raised there. From a youth. My father was born there, you know what I'm saying? And what was it? Saint Elizabeth Hospital, right? So, but she was there so long that even when she, here, she had a, you know, a, I ain't saying a Jamaican accent because it was actually a British accent. So, she had that accent, being there, for so long, right? But she was actually born in Cuba. But regardless to that, I also have a side of family on my mother's side who, if you ask my mother, she was, you know, um, one of these tribes. I believe it was Blackfoot. She says or whatever. I don't know. I'm not getting into that. So, um, reading this article made me have a lot of respect for those individuals who are actually going through, this struggle. So, like I tell people all the time, I'm not a person bent on this hatred or I always push back against the the separatists within our people. So if you are a separatist between our people, we are always gonna have disagreements. Some of it could be hateful, and hate means to destroy. So in that, I've never felt that way towards anybody outside of putting certain people in danger or something like that. It's just too much. So my pushback is always those people who promote that level of venom within our community, right? So this is me showing that no, it has never been this all-out war against the people. Why? Because, like I said, we're about to get into this article, right? Let me bring this person up, the Honorable Chuck Huskin Jr., right? This is, one of the people who was speaking. I'm just saying honorable because, as you can see right there, that's the title he's under. I'm not, referring to him as an honorable person. I'm just saying, this is what they, the title I guess he goes by, right? Let's get into this. Take this desktop away. Right. Oh, the picture was provided by the Indian country today, Oklahoma tribes. Okay, I guess it's provided by the Indian country today. Oklahoma tribe, I guess, I don't know what's the name of it. I just wanted to make sure I give it. So it says Oklahoma tribe split over status of descendants of their former slaves, which is the title. So I'm assuming, the title is provided by Indian country, right? This article was written by Lauren Green and Gaylord News, right? Washington. Oklahoma's five largest tribes on Wednesday split on their willingness to comply with terms of treaties signed more than 150 years ago regarding descendants of their former slaves. They are going through a long conversation happening among the tribes that is resolved and the Cherokee Nation that is not resolved in others, right? Said the U.S. Senate James Lankford, Republican, Oklahoma City. Minutes before the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs was to hold a hearing on the status of Indian freemen, the descendants of the former slaves of the five tribes. So once again, I've had, conversations with the freemen and this, that, and the third. We have always been at odds, right? So this is me taking their side and, saying y'all should practice the same thing. Y'all should practice not having such a hatred in you, and you would have people like more like me. I just put it aside because I understand as I look at things. Other people, you will always leave a bad taste in them because of the venom that you spew. You actually sound like, white people most of the time. So, little has happened in three of Oklahoma's five largest tribes: Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Muskogee. I'm sorry if I didn't get that right. Nations, which the federal government more than 150 years ago required tribes to change the way they treat descendants of slaves they held until freed at the conclusion of the Civil War. So, understand that it wasn't this peaceful um um indulging in slavery, meaning that they just didn't approve of the way that they was treating them. So that's how a lot of times you might get the story come across. Inside this, you understand that they were practicing the same logic as the white man, as the Arab, as the Chinaman, as, many of these people have done throughout history. The Native American has also participated with the same logic. right? It is the federal government by placing tribal membership in a political arena that initiated this freedmen issue, not the Choctaw Nation, said Michael Burridge, General Counsel of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and former federal judge, using the terminologies used to refer to the descendants of slaves. Now, mind you, this guy used to be a federal judge, and so now he's participated in the American system, and then he turns around and says, "No, that ain't my people in general. That's something with the system that you got to take up that he actually participated in." Understand that logic. So I'm gonna read what he says again. It is the federal government, not. I mean, it's the federal government by placing tribal membership in a political arena that in initiated this freedmen issue. Like now it's an issue, it's something separate, right? Not the Choctaw Nation, said Michael, Burridge, General Counsel of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and the former federal judge, using the terminologies used to refer to the descendants of slaves. If there's a problem, the government needs to find another solution that does not infringe upon the rights of the Choctaw people or the integrity of our self government, Burridge said. This is an ex-federal judge who's saying that it's the government who caused the problem, and we never acknowledge these people as a part of us. We always acknowledge them as slaves, and a slave, I guess, inside, their nation is not acknowledged of the people, even if their offspring, were came out. Say if you were part of this nation. You had slaves. You had them. Clearly, you must have been raping them or whatnot, because why would you disown your own people? If I'm a member of this community and I have a wife who happened to be a slave, right, and I have children, you're denying my offspring because clearly they were not viewed in that fashion, right? It is a congressional hearing where time is limited and personal and political concerns are on the table. The proper place to educate such an important matter as tribal membership, he asked. Oh no, he says is congressional hearings, right? After serving after surviving the cruelty of the Trail of Tears, the Drawers Act, and near termination of our tribal functions, and nearly 2 centuries of taken at the hands of the United States government, the Choctaw Nation deserves better than to have the core of its constitutional identity as a sovereign tribal threat, he said. Again, as I look at this, I'm hearing him basically say, listen, we are sovereign, we have nothing to do with them. So what, we had, offspring by these people, but that's your business. We would have still had them as slaves basically if you didn't, come in and try to, lay some groundwork in us trying and having to acknowledge, quote unquote, in so many words, these people. Not us. We're sovereign. Them people over there are your problem. We only set them free due to the fact of a treaty that we signed. You basically screwed us like you screwed the Confederate by making them give up the slaves, is what I'm hearing. And change and rhetoric was first seen by the Cherokee Nation in 2017, following a response to a U.S. District Court ruling determining that the descendants of Cherokee freemen were entitled to full citizenship in order to oblige with the 1866 treaty. Unlike the Cherokee, the Seminole nations of Oklahoma grant partial citizenship to its freemen. Although granted limited citizenship, they are still not allowed to hold senior leadership position and are denied certain services. These freemen were granted health care and October 21 after reports of denying them COVID-19 vaccines. However, the Choctaw, Muskogee, Chickasaw, and Seminole nations all expressed frustration during the hearing with the government interfering in their tribal affairs. We all have a respectful dialogue. These issues are hard. We're talking about two groups of people who have experienced tribal injustice as a result of the federal government's actions. No, you participated in those actions that you saying that you was wrong then. Like, oh, see these two groups, the blacks and the natives, we was wrong by the government. You were wrong, no doubt, but you clearly had a peace with them where then you also involved in slave trading. So one person, one group remains completely wronged. These offspring have been completely wronged by the government and by you. So both of y'all need to fix the problem. Whatever tribe you are in the government needs to come and fix that problem. Said American Indian Affairs Chief, right? I'm read it again. We all have a respectful dialogue. These issues are hard. We are talking about two groups of people who have experienced terrible injustices as a result of the federal government's actions, said Indian Affairs Chairman U.S. Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat, HI, right? Right before he led the hearing. We want to have the first public hearing and hear from the freedmen's representatives as well as the tribes and the Departments of Interior to figure out what the path forward is. But it starts with respectful dialogue, he says. You're not being respectful by making that statement. If you ask me, I couldn't be inside that situation, hear that, and then turn around and be like, okay, so you want respect, but you are, to me, I find that disrespectful what you're saying. You're putting it all on, this group, which we acknowledge has done us both wrong, but then you also excluding yourself from that wrong, like as if you didn't participate in no wrong yourself, and you're not still wronging us to this day. Right? So, the path to move forward following the hearing is unclear, with many important issues to consider. We will see what reaction comes out. There is some conversation about a GAO study where there is conversations about how does the dialogue continue at this point. This has been ongoing dialogue, obviously, for more than 100 years, since the 1860s and the late 1990s. It was revised again from Lankford, right? Quite frankly, it is keeping the dialogue going and trying to get a resolution, and there are multiple ways to try to get there, but a GAO study is one of those ways, he said. The GAO is an independent, nonpartisan agency that works for Congress. The study on this matter relates to the 1866 treaty, would provide information that can be used for government improvement on this topic. I think for the Senate to undertake or to request a GAO would be helpful, because having all the current information in one place, I think, would be useful for members in Congress. I think it would be useful to the tribes, tribal leaders, and I think it would be useful for the country to the extent there is interest in this subject, said Chuck Holskin, a Cherokee Nation chief. Now you notice who they left out. It's useful for Congress to understand their argument. The GAO would also have everything on their argument. Who did they leave out of the conversation? The Freedmen, right? Unless we're going, that's what I'm seeing right there. Now, I think there should be an interest in the subject, because if you are interested in this subject, what you're really interested in is treaties, and treaties ought to be examined and honored, and this is really what the Freedmen issue is about. He said, I can respect that, right? Although this issue is far from being resolved, this hearings mark the important day of dialogue that has been long awaited by the five tribes and the descendants of the freedmen, right? The freedmen's position is that the freedmen are still have their treaty rights in accordance with the treaties, even if they are not tribally registered. They are to be treated the same as Indian tribal members in accordance to treaty language. That's a fact. Had said Freedmen, descendant, and members of the Cherokee Nation, Marilyn Vann, in her testimony. It is the responsibility of the U.S. government to enforce the treaty. Cannot argue with that. So their thing is, from what I'm understanding, is okay, we're not even going to argue with them. You don't want to acknowledge us. According to this treaty, all of the rights that is entitled to us should be given through you. Whether we are the tribe of the freedmen, or you acknowledge us as one of these, descendants over here. Either way, you need to uphold that, give us our sovereignty, and, give us some land or whatever the case may be, and allow us to develop and grow just like you did those people 150 years ago. And on that note, I must agree. I cannot argue with any of the things that is put forward on the table. I cannot argue with that. Only thing I said, once again, my argument is they also take that same approach as the native of, oh, that ain't got nothing to do with us. They take the approach of the white man when it comes to their black heritage. They will totally deny we are a native Americans, American descendants of slavery, meaning that they were here, they have nothing to do with the Africans, the blacks. We're not, they are those people. And so my question is how was you placed in this slavery? Are you saying that you came from one of these other tribes and they put you in, and you were brought into this tribe? I'm confused on how do you separate yourself from your African heritage while arguing about them denying you your native heritage. That's where I'm confused at, and this is why me and Ados always has a problem because of that logic. How they approach it is in the same way they are approached by their enslavers on both sides. They have developed their train of thought when it comes to their own heritage. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, okay, cool. You are being denied your Native American, rights, which you deserve. Can't deny that. But in fighting for that, you choose to, push aside your African heritage. And I have a problem with that. That's it, nothing else, no more. I can support you on your plight, but then we still remain enemies because you put out a venom within the people. You spew and we see you as us. So then the hatred and everything that's spewing in our community, you are, one of the groups that's causing this. You have a problem with your Africans coming in here, the Caribbeans. You spew that hatred. And you need to check that because here goes somebody who identifies with many different cultures, right? Or, land masses, right? And still cannot appreciate and respect your fight. So why must you always put out the hatred? That's my only question. I'm out of here. Until next time. Peace.